jump into a quick story that we can find in the book of 1 Samuel chapter 5. This text reveals a powerful truth about the glory and supremacy of our God. This passage centers on the Ark of the Covenant and the pagan god Dagon. We'll explore how this story emphasizes that God's glory is incomparable and not to be shared with idols, and how we as believers are called to examine and remove any idols in our own lives. So please all turn to 1 Samuel chapter 5. I'll start by setting the scene. In the preceding chapters of 1 Samuel, we read how Israel had been in a difficult period. They had been defeated in a battle by the Philistines, a constant rival, and the Ark of the Covenant, which represented the very presence of God, was captured by the Philistines. Israel had lost sight of the Ark's true significance. When the Israelites suffered a loss rather than deal with the real problem, which was their sin, they fetched the Ark and took it into battle. They viewed the Ark as little more than a ceremonial token that would ensure God's help, almost a good luck charm. As a result, they suffered defeat, and God allowed the Ark to be captured by the Philistines. The Philistines took the Ark of God and brought it to Ashdod, one of their major cities. They placed it in the temple of Dagon, their primary deity, thinking that this would show Dagon had conquered the God of Israel. If we could start reading I'll read verse 1 and 2. That's 1 Samuel chapter 5, 1 and 2. And the Philistines took the Ark of God and brought it from Ebenezer unto Ashdod. When the Philistines took the Ark of God, they brought it into the house of Dagon and set it up by Dagon. From the Philistines' perspective, placing the Ark beside Dagon symbolized that God of Israel was just another defeated deity. But as we'll see, God was about to demonstrate that he does not share his glory with any other. The story takes a dramatic turn in the next morning. In verse 3 we read, And when they of Ashdod arose early on the morrow, behold, Dagon was fallen upon his face to the earth before the ark of the Lord. And they took Dagon and set him up in his place again. So here we see the image of Dagon fallen face down before the ark. I'm sure that when they walked in, they were probably a little unsure of how that happened. Never saw that happen before, but I'm sure they didn't think that God's presence was the reason for that. Symbolically, this posture of Dagon falling face down before the ark represents worship or submission. And even though Dagon is a lifeless idol, this scene points to a powerful truth. Every created thing, every idol must ultimately bow before the Lord. However, the Philistines did not get that message. They set Dagon back up, but God was not done. In verses 4 and 5 we see, And when they arose on the morrow morning, behold, Dagon was fallen upon his face to the ground before the ark of the Lord. And the head of Dagon and both the palms of his hands were cut off upon the threshold. Only the stump of Dagon was left to him. Therefore neither the priests of Dagon nor any that come into Dagon's house tread on the threshold of Dagon in Ashdod unto this day. This time Dagon was not just fallen, he was shattered. His head and hands, symbols of authority and power, were broken off. And this was God's decisive way of showing that Dagon was powerless before him. God's glory will not be shared with any other god, lowercase g, or idol. This passage speaks clearly that there's only one true God, and he alone is worthy of our worship. After this, we read that the hand of the Lord was heavily against the people of Ashdod, and they suffered plagues and afflictions as a result of keeping the ark. In verse 6 it says, But the hand of the Lord was heavy upon them of Ashdod, and he destroyed them and smote them with emerods, even Ashdod and the coast thereof. So the people finally realized that this suffering wasn't coincidental. They began to understand that the presence of the ark in their midst was the cause of their affliction, and they feared and decided to send the ark away, hoping to avoid further judgment. As the chapter continues, you'll read that as they moved the ark, those places would become afflicted until ultimately the Philistines returned the ark back to the nation of Israel. God's actions here are a vivid reminder that idols cannot save. Only God has true power, and when we set up idols in our hearts, our lives, we distance ourselves from him. The story of 1 Samuel is not just an ancient account. It carries us a powerful message for us today. It shows us that God does not tolerate idols. We may not be in a culture where we currently bow to statues, but idolatry can take root in our hearts. Anything that we value, love, or depend on more than God can become an idol. This could be your money, your career, reputation, relationships, friends, family, even our desires and comforts. In Matthew chapter 6, verse 24, Jesus says, "No man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. Ye cannot serve God and mammon." This is the same truth that's displayed in 1 Samuel chapter 5. God's glory cannot coexist with idols in our lives. To ensure that God is truly first in our hearts, we need to regularly examine ourselves. And here are some practical steps that we can take. First, identify possible idols. Reflect on areas in life where we might be placing too much importance. This kind of held true to me personally within the past couple of weeks, because as some of you may know, but many of you know, I'm a diehard Yankee fan. And so I spent a lot of time watching the World Series, even though it didn't go our way. But in all seriousness, I did find myself spending a lot more time watching the Yankees than reading my Bible, being in prayer, and constantly, focusing on the wrong things. That was an idol I was able to identify. We could also make idols of people that we trust in, going to a family member or going to a husband or a significant other. There's no sin in that, but, going to the Lord first, bringing all our problems and our everything to the Lord. Surrender our idols to God. Secondly, just as Dagon was broken, we need to break down anything that we have allowed to rival God in our lives. This involves repentance, surrender, and asking God to cleanse our hearts. And then finally, commit to worshiping God alone. As Christians, we must remind ourselves that true fulfillment and joy comes only from a relationship with God. When we fully rely on Him, we find the satisfaction that idols can never provide. So to conclude, 1 Samuel chapter 5 is a powerful reminder that our God is a jealous God who does not share His glory with another. The image of Dagon fallen and broken before the Ark of the Covenant is a vivid demonstration that no idol can stand before the Almighty. As followers of Christ, let us be vigilant to remove any idols from our hearts and live fully devoted to Him. May we honor the Lord as the true and only God, trusting that He alone is worthy of our worship, our love, and our kindness, and our lives.